let's take a witness prep session number. What are your goals? What are you hoping to do, and how do you do it?
Tell the truth with emotional sincerity and clarity. Tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth. Your clients are lying to you constantly, Sharif. Constantly, but not in the way that you think.
This is RVA Trial Lawyers, Virginia's trial lawyer podcast, hosted by Sharif Gray and Niall Abuzaki.
All right, we're back, RVA Trial Lawyers, and today we have Andrew Caple-Shaw with us. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. You and I met maybe 2 years ago at the Advanced Depositions College by AAJ in New Orleans, and really learned a lot from you then, and have continued to follow your work. And we've stayed in touch, which I'm very grateful for. So it's a real pleasure to have you here. And Andrew's going to tell us a little bit more about what he does, but he is the managing partner at Act of Communication, helps with trial strategy, helps lawyers learn how to become better advocates in the courtroom. And I know, Andrew, you guys spend a lot of time helping with witness prep for depositions and trial testimony and stuff like that. So with that, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. My name is Andrew Caple-Shaw. I am an age I would not like to admit increasingly. Prior to entering the legal field, I was an actor my entire life. I've been a professional actor for, I'm rapidly approaching 40 years. I started out when I was a kid doing regional theater, and then ended up in Hollywood doing television and film. Got into the Television Academy, got to work on some really great shows, which, again, increasingly are becoming dated shows, although some of them I'm still very proud of, and some of them have stayed on the air for like 20 years, which, makes them almost seem current. So I was an actor. That was my life. Got involved with helping lead the actors' labor unions, and that was one of the big steps that led me towards the field of law. That's how I met Alan Blumenfeld and Catherine James, who, if your listeners are young, they might not know who they are. If they're older, they know exactly who they are. They're sort of the OG trial consultants in the field of courtroom communication. So when anytime you see somebody talking about authenticity and being yourself and using your own voice, usually that's going to be something that they learned from someone who learned from Catherine, because she started doing this work back in the late 1970s, back when the whole idea was, it's like the Harvard Debating Society, right? And so her work and her philosophy really spread out, and I think it's a big piece of what people like TLC do. It's all over. Her exercises have now sort of been copied and adapted by almost all the great sort of schools and cooperatives, whatever you want to call them. But Catherine was the one that came up with that stuff originally. And she came into my life through some mutual friends in Hollywood. And though I am a lawyer, I don't really think of that as being a core part of the most important part of what I do. What I do comes from the skills that I learned training as an actor, and how to connect emotionally, how to tell a story. I'm now the managing partner at ACT, which was Alan and Catherine's firm, and is now run by a team of younger and enthusiastic folks. The sort of story that I tell on the history of ACT is that in 1978, two young graduates of the American Conservatory Theater had an experience with a jury trial that they described as the worst live performance I've ever seen in my entire life. I didn't like any of the characters. I couldn't follow the plot. And this whole thing revolved around a sort of audience participation exercise, but nobody told the audience what they were supposed to be doing until the end. And so they asked this question: why are these people being taught to tell a story this way? Right? Why are lawyers not being trained like actors to use their voice, to use their body, to use cliffhangers and build up and to structure stories in ways that keep people on the edge of their seats? I mean, this is a performative, it is a communicative act, right? The act of communication. the art of telling a story. So they started teaching lawyers workshops, like go to a hotel conference center, and they would teach the lawyers how to use their voice in direct and cross, stuff like that, how to structure an opening. And the lawyers came back and said, that was so wonderful. Can you help me with my case? So next thing they knew, they were sort of helping lawyers write and deliver their openings and their closings. At this particular point in history, what we now know of as sort of modern plaintiff's theory, right, modern case argument theory, is beginning to evolve also on the West Coast with people like the National Jury Project, right? So the National Jury Project and some of those folks that are doing this stuff in like the 80s will eventually become the work that Cusimano and Wenner do for AAJ on that sort of self-interest motivated reasoning, fear motivation, that kind of stuff, that would then later on become Reptile, right? If you go read David's damages book, the number of times that he references his good friend Susie McPherson, who was back at NJP back in the day, and Catherine's mentioned in there as well, all of that stuff really traces back to that point in time. So people like NJP are figuring out how jurors make decisions. And Catherine and Alan are figuring out, okay, if this is how they make decisions, how do we tell a story within the confines of what it is we need to say to motivate those jurors? And so they're really pioneers in again, what later I think is best codified when Friedman and Malone do Rules of the Road, and when David does Reptile, right? They're cleaning up and simplifying these incredibly abstract concepts that people like the NJP folks and Catherine and all are putting to life one at a time, but sort of without a simplified form, right? So over time, those lawyers are having so much luck with having us as sort of their coaches on delivery, that they come back and say, I've really figured out, I found my voice, I'm me, I'm authentic, I'm getting great verdicts, but man, this case I've got coming up, I feel like my witness is going to kill the whole thing. Can you help with the witness? Now, Alan, our partner, is Jewish, and he's from New York, and he has this quote that he gave me one time that cracked me up. And he said, yeah, can I help your witness? It's just like when the casting director says, can you ride a horse? Of course, Jews and horses. I rode one in Brooklyn all the time, And so we said, yeah, we can work with your witnesses. And that's when Catherine really developed, and again, sort of in the same way that authenticity piece got to start with Catherine, most of the great witness prep technique that you see nowadays can trace its roots back to what Catherine developed, and is now, you can find it in her book, but her book is just the fundamentals. There's a lot of nuanced stuff that only our team members really know how to do. And so we're kind of now, I would say 90% of our work, we're sort of the go-to on the witness prep side. There are other folks out there, and even some with acting backgrounds that have kind of come into the space. There's some that I love, and there's some that I can't stand. But we really are sort of in that, when you're looking at the billion with a B type verdicts or the circle of advocates types, like those are people that Catherine knew when they were baby lawyers, right? And now I inherit as clients, not because I'm amazing, but because I haven't screwed up this amazing life work that she built. So that's kind of who I am and who we are. We've got a whole team. There are other consultants just like us who were personally trained by Catherine, and then later by myself. And what we do is try to add value to the case by bringing the damages to life, or in situations where you've got communication issues or likability issues or things like that, where you've got a perfectly good case, but your client's just going to zero the whole thing out or turn it into a D verdict. We're helping them sort of get over that fear and that anxiety and deal with the experience of testifying. So that's kind of the thing we're known for, is the witness prep, but we still do workshops, and we still, we're going around the country. A lot of lawyers, they're getting ready to go to trial. They'll call us in and they'll say, hey, I need you to help, spend a day with me, look at this opening statement, tell me what you think of the way I'm doing it, where I'm standing, how is the emotion coming to life, that kind of stuff. That was a long answer for a short question.
No, it was awesome. And it's eye-opening for me. I didn't realize kind of the depth that your group has. I mean, when you were talking about the authenticity piece, I immediately went to, oh, wow, she must have worked with like Jerry Spence and those guys back in the day, right? And I guess I hope the Jerry Spence listeners don't listen to this. I went to the ranch a couple years ago, and it was fantastic, and I highly recommend it.
Here's
Spence, go ahead. Yeah.
Here's a funny thing about TLC is I live in a town of 1,600 people just outside of Atlanta, but it's kind of like a vacation, like getaway town for most people. And TLC is like down at the farmhouse. Like there's 1,600 people in this town, and we got a bunch of TLC people here working. I think what TLC is doing is great. It's kind of a delicate topic for us because there was someone else that worked with Alan and Catherine back in the day, and they went through what I would say is an unamicable breakup. And it's kind of one of the great tragedies of trial consulting history. But like the week they broke up, or not the week, but like right amidst that breakup, they were sort of divvying up the clients. And they'd gotten a call from these people up at this ranch who wanted to book us for something, and they were kind of going, okay, well, you can have this one. And so he went on to sort of be like their communications guy that teaches a lot of the active communication material at TLC. And I understand he's kind of taken it in some different directions. It's a little bit different than what we do. But I think that what TLC does in that quest for authenticity that we're always on, I think it's wonderful. I've never done TLC stuff myself, but I've obviously got a lot of friends and a lot of people who are out of there. So, yeah, I mean, if it sounds familiar, it's because at the very beginning of TLC, there was sort of an active communication. Our philosophy made its way in there, and I think is still alive and well today. Although I don't know that anybody owns it, right? It's like at a certain point, the blues became rock and roll, right? And you want to pay respect to the people who created it, but now it's going in all kinds of different directions. And as long as it's not turning into sort of fraudulent BS, which I do think there's some of that. There's a lot of that in the ecosystem right now that scares me for young lawyers. As long as you're sticking true to the simple, authentic, sincere, humble piece, which I think TLC does from my experience with them, then you're in the right direction. Like Catherine would always say, there's no such thing. The only competitors we have are people who do the job poorly. Because if people do the job well, it amplifies the need, which brings more lawyers into our lives that we can make a difference with. It's when people are hacks that do a terrible job, that hurts us more than anything, because it means younger people won't give us a try. That's kind of been our mindset. So,
question.
Sure.
When someone says, be authentic, what does that mean?
So, I took a look at some of your past podcasts, and I saw Freed was on here, and he's kind of, he's come from that school. He's sort of the generation between me and Catherine, age-wise. And I'm sure, just based on the little blurb, I didn't get to watch his episode, that he spent a lot of time talking about that. The answer to that is probably best summed up in something that Alan said to me. And Alan Blumenfeld is Catherine's partner in life and in business, who's trained a lot of lawyers. And he's a great actor. He's on TV all the time. He's the rabbi on the Gilmore Girls, and he's, everything from Gilmore Girls to Golden Girls to, so many TV shows and movies. And he is in his 70s now. And we were having a conversation about how to be authentic. And Alan at one point said, I'm still trying to figure it out. He's like, I've been doing this for over 50 years now. I've dedicated my life to it. And God only knows what the answer to this is. Like, it's not a trick. Like, it's not a gimmick. It's not a switch that you flip. Like, it's not like learning a dance step, right? Authenticity is, it's about self-awareness without being self-conscious. It's about being in the moment without being so in the moment that you've lost context. It's about failing, like not being afraid to fail on a substantial scale. It's, I hate my voice. I absolutely hate the sound of my own voice. I had a lisp growing up that you can still catch traces of. For a guy who's 6'4" and 260 pounds, I still have people call me ma'am, like when I call customer service on the phone. But it's me, right? And I spent so long trying to bring myself down a couple of registers. But when I do that, I lose some of my energy and my enthusiasm because I'm focused on that vocal technique, right? Or I'm becoming someone that's, even if so slightly, is different than who I am. And it's about just going, you know what? I'm enough. I'm interesting enough to watch, right? This voice is not blowing anybody away, but I can go to soft places with my voice. Because of the way I hit those S's and because of the place in my palette that I project sound from just naturally, I can do things with a sustained inflection that draw people in, right? So that heightened pitch, there's good sides to this, right? And if instead of trying to be something, I just get the hell out of my own way, there's beauty to the thing that I am, right? And there's enough unique beauty to the thing that I am that by God, I'm just as interesting as James Earl Jones. When I'm at my best and my most authentic, I am as compelling as the most compelling performers out there. And that's 100% true for trial lawyers. So be authentic is not something you're going to learn at a weekend seminar. You can make big steps. And I say that as somebody who does weekend seminars where I help people take these big steps. But, authenticity for me, it's like in private coaching, I'm sitting down with people digging in and we're talking about childhood stuff. Alexandra Wright from our team who does vocal work, she's a professor of voice and movement at UCLA. Her vocal work starts with what were some of the earliest influences that you felt like you had on your voice. There's something called a rising inflection that if you ever watch us teach, it's how you actually ask a question. It's an uptick in pitch at the end of a statement, like this, right? Like, what time is it, right? And if you overuse that as a woman, especially as a woman, it sounds like you're a valley girl and you don't know what you're talking about. It's a great tool that you want to use in certain situations, and good lawyers actually underuse the rising inflection. But if you overuse it, it makes you look insecure.
I'm glad we're talking about this because I agree that you are able to connect on a much deeper level with someone or the jury in a case, right? If you're able to kind of be real with them, right? And so I imagine you come across as more credible. But the thing that I certainly struggle with is this. I mean, and you know it, right? You're a lawyer and you work with lawyers, right? Lawyer type A, go to law school. All right, well, what book do I need to read to be more authentic? What checklist, right? And of course, I mean, that's what we're looking for. But as you said, it doesn't really exist. So when you are helping people become more authentic, I guess two parts. First off, why is authenticity important in the setting of a trial? And then two, what are you doing or recommending to that lawyer to do to work on it?
So I think let me flip the question around.
Sounds good.
Okay? Instead of what do I need to do to connect with them, what do they need from me in order to feel a desire to connect with me? Okay. I have the two commandments that I preach. When I used to teach at the law school level, and I had 10 commandments, and I eventually got rid of 8 of them, right? And it all came down to Sanford Meisner's a very famous acting teacher who's had a huge effect on me because his technique is the one that gets you out of your own head, right? And that was where I really suffered. Like the lawyer part of me lived in the actor me and made me a worse actor. And he said, really talk and really listen, meaning really talk, don't just deliver lines, and really listen. I flipped it on its head for my commandment and said, really listen and really talk, right? Start by, just because the jury can't use words doesn't mean they can't talk to you. Doesn't mean they can't communicate with you. So really listen and really talk. And then commandment number 2 was, it's not about you. It's not about you. Amy Pardick is a brilliant trial consultant from Indiana. She does jury work. We do not do jury work. But she does jury work. And she did this wonderful research study on, it was originally supposed to be about comparing how lawyers perceive themselves versus how juries perceive those lawyers. And what it ended up is she got all this massive amount of deeply fascinating data. And what she discovered is that jurors can basically clump all lawyers into one of 6, what she calls archetypes for men and 5 archetypes for women, right? That they eventually, all lawyers will be seen as either the teacher, the bull in a china shop, or the Rambo, right? The absent-minded professor. So she had these sort of archetypes that everybody falls into. And what she found is the highest level, because she also tracked what is your probability of winning your case if you're perceived as XYZ, right? What are the odds the teacher wins versus the bull in a china shop, right? And her highest performing archetypes were archetypes where the jury perceived that the attorney was taking care of them as a jury, was looking out for them, cared what they thought, right? They're not here to tell the jury what to think. They're here to give the jury what it needs in order to go do the right thing, okay? So it's not about you is exactly what it sounds like on its face. Like this whole thing, like it's like, what do I need to do to be more authentic, right? It's kind of like in witness preparation, right? And again, that's 90% of what we're doing on these mega cases that we're on. And when we're with the famous lawyers, right, we're doing witness prep, and then we're doing case strategy work that comes from witness prep. And the idea in all of this is, in witness prep, the thing that I hear the most is this phrase, I have a way that I prepare my witnesses. And I'll say, well, what's the first word in the statement, I have a way that I prepare my witnesses?
Right.
What's the word that appears twice? And I have a way that I prepare my witnesses.
Sure. It goes against commandment number 2, right?
Yeah. So it's all about, like when you're doing witness prep, it's about the witness. When you're doing jury communication, it's about the jury. When you're storytelling, it's about the story. If you are lost in the moment of your story, then so is the jury. If you're asking, I wonder how this is coming across and when do I need to hit my next note, the jury is going to see that thought playing in your head, right? And so that for me is, it's about getting outside of yourself and getting in the thing that you're doing. There's a story that's attributed to Stanislavski, and I call it the story of Stanislavski and the pink elephants. And it's the story of the master and the student. And the master is in his workshop with the student, and he sees the student is just really not focused, is doing terrible. And the master says, that's it. I want you to go outside. I want you to stand under the street lamp, and you can come back in when you're not thinking about pink elephants. All right? So if I tell you to not think about pink elephants, what's the one thing you're thinking about?
Pink elephants.
Pink elephants, right? So student stands outside the rest of the day, comes back in the next day and says, getting ready to say, well, like, what was the lesson there? And the master says, what are you doing here? Go back outside. You can come back in when you're not thinking about pink elephants. Student starts to make his way back. A couple hours later, starts to make his way back in, and then turns back around. Finally, the student runs in and says, Master, there's something I have to tell you. There's something I have to tell you. You're not thinking about pink elephants. And the student says, oh, no, that one's on me. You can stay. What did you need to tell me? I needed to tell you about a blue rhinoceros. Because if you've ever seen a land mammal like an elephant or a rhino up close, they have these giant eyeballs. They have hair that comes out of their skin. They have, chipped horns with dirt. They have saliva that comes down in just buckets. They have a smell. They have a huff to the way they breathe. They're deeply fascinating, detail-filled creatures, right? If you're focused on all of the sensory details and the experience of the blue rhinoceros, there's no room left for pink elephants. It's something that's taught to young actors, and I think it's really, really profound. If you're asking how you're doing, you're not in the moment of the story that you're trying to tell. And by the way, you can't help but be authentic when you're not thinking. Because when you're outside of your own head, authenticity just flows naturally, right? And one way to not be in your head is to be curious, right? When Brene Brown, went wild, every actor went like, yeah, I knew that. Vulnerability is strength. Like, that's like 101. And so when Ted Lasso went famous for be curious, not judgmental, every actor in America was like, well, yeah, if you're judgmental, you shut yourself off, right? And that's especially true in jury selection, which I think, even though it's not the part where I get to shine, although we do teach the technique, we don't teach the question structure. Like, we don't pick the questions like an Amy Pardek or an Artemis Malkpour will. But we do the delivery piece of voir dire. But voir dire is the most important part of the entire equation, in my humble opinion, because that's when you're connecting, that's when you're listening. Right. That's when there's that give and take. You're setting the tone for everything. And if voir dire is not about you and your objectives, you're killing it. You're absolutely murdering voir dire. If they just feel like you're just talking and you wanted to get to know them, you have just completely blown voir dire out of the water, gold star.
Which kills me when I hear about courts that don't allow attorney-led voir dire. Kills me. But it's Virginia, we've got it's okay. We've got some good law on voir dire. But as I told you, we recently had a federal case in Texas, and there was no voir dire. And I thought the judge did the best job he possibly could, but we missed that ability to connect.
Yeah, it's clutch. Although, there's some places, and I don't want to give away so we have a policy. We don't talk about the big verdicts unless we're in we're at AAJ in a room with just attorneys, in large part because we don't want the other side to know who we're working with, to start, deposing about our involvement, stuff like that. But, there's a particular jurisdiction that I'm thinking of that doesn't have voir dire. But, oh, my God, it's the greatest jurisdiction in America because it's just a bunch of really angry blue-collar people. And so it's like, oh man, what am I going to do if I don't get voir dire? It's like, well, imagine if you're the defense and you're walking into like a really populist blue collar hub and you don't get to ask any questions. So sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It just all kind of depends on your space. But I think if you're a better lawyer than the other side, God, losing voir dire can really level the playing field a lot. But it elevates bad lawyers, the absence of voir dire. My 2 cents, anyway.
No, absolutely. And I guess not surprisingly, on this podcast, we talk about voir dire a ton. And the thing that we kind of gear as like a successful voir dire, which I think kind of goes with what you just said, is if the lawyer's doing most of the talking, then that's wrong, right? Like, that's not a successful voir dire, right? Like, it's all about listening. And it's not easy to do because us lawyers, right? We're type A, we have things to say, we've got an agenda, and to be able to kind of let go of that and just accept their answers and truly be there and truly, or as you say, really, really listen to them. It sounds easy, but it's not. So what do you do when working with lawyers about trying to get them to become more authentic, to embrace more of their real self? What does that look like?
It depends on how many of them are together in a space. And yeah, it depends on how many am I working with. It depends on where they at in their career, for example. It depends on a lot of variables. Like if they've just brought me in and they're trying their first big case and it's just the two of us, I am sitting down and it almost looks like psychotherapy, right? I'm talking to them about why they became a lawyer and why is this case important to them, and what is it that keeps you up at night about that? Like I'm trying to get them connected to their story. And I'm doing a very individualized, and then I'm getting them up on their feet. And like when I see crazy stuff going on with their hands, I'm exploring what is at the root cause of the hands doing what the hands are doing. I'm not like, pinning their hands, to their sides. I'm exploring what it is that's causing the behavior, right? It's heavy on diagnostic. When I'm in a group of lawyers, it depends on the size of the lawyers. In a big group, I'm doing exercises that everybody can see. In a smaller group, I'm doing exercises where everybody gets a turn, right? We're putting together a little jury box, and we're teaching how to connect with individuals within the jury box rather than just ambiguously talking to, this wall of 12, right? I'm teaching them how to, what we call emotional listening, to pay attention to what signals people are giving you, to leave the people who don't want to talk to you alone, right? Sometimes people, they're auditory communicators. They don't want eye contact. They're shy. The only way they're going to listen to you is if you leave them alone. And you go over to grandma who's like doing, smiling and big-eyed, and you look at her and you connect with her because she wants that visual piece. So we're putting together a little jury to teach that skill. We're taking, one of our most famous exercises is we do work with an opening statement of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? Because we don't want the substance of the case to be what matters. We want the story structure to be what matters. And we'll break down story using how did you tell the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and which tools did you use that a trial lawyer should use, and which tools did you use that are going to hurt you in a courtroom, right? Because there's some storytelling devices that are great for trial, and there's some that will distract from trial. So it all depends on whether we're in a workshop, a small group, one-on-one. It's just going to vary, but it all comes from theater games. Like all of our stuff, and again, for other teaching environments who like came to our stuff and then opened up their own school and whatever, it's all rooted in theater games. A lot of it comes from the work of a woman named Viola Spoilen, who's sort of the godmother of improv comedy, reactive listening, stuff like that.
Can we talk a little bit about story structure and what works, what doesn't work? I mean, I've learned over the last few years that while not a rule, but a very, very strong suggestion is, at least in our cases, to focus on the defendant's conduct, almost exclusively until the very end, and then in an opening, then you get to your client and their damages.
So that's something we taught for years, but you'll never find evidence that we ever talked about it, because it's only been in the recent past with social media and people like doing sort of for-profit, online education type stuff. We used to be very protective that we didn't want the defense to know our secrets. Now, I think there are some outfits that really don't have any protections whatsoever against, defense lawyers coming in. There's one outfit that like every defense lawyer subscribes to that is just a lot of plaintiff's content. And the defense lawyers go there to just watch, like, oh, I got a trial against Joe Freed. I'm going to go watch all of his stuff, on this platform. So we used to keep that stuff a lot more secret, but yeah, we're focused on the defendant's conduct. We're focused on decision-making in a narrative story. Okay. So, everybody kind of knows the rules of the road, the David Ball, like we start with a rule. Nobody ever really talks about the origin of the concept of the rule, right? Why do we start with a rule? Okay. Because what we're at the end of the day doing is we've got a jury. And at some point the jury is going to go, well, that's stupid. I wouldn't have done that. And if they go, well, that's stupid. I wouldn't have done that. And they're talking about your client, you're in trouble. If they go, well, that's stupid. I wouldn't have done that. And they're talking about the defense, you're in a really, really good place. So the rule, right, for a Ball or for Friedman and Malone, the rule really is, here's the thing that we can all agree you shouldn't do. All right? That if you do something, if you do this, it's really stupid. There's no reason to ever do this. Right? That's our rule statement for our opening. And then we go into a narrative, and then we tell the story of all the decisions that the other side made that led to them breaking this rule. And hopefully along the way we're going, well, I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have done that. Right?
And that's the jury. You're hoping the jury is telling that to themselves. Right.
Yeah. Well, but you don't need the jury to tell it to themselves. The jury is going to experience it through the narrative, right? So if I say, Bob the trucker had been driving his delivery route for 9.5 hours. He'd been on the road for 9.5 hours. He'd been going without food and he'd just been getting by on his coffee. But he knew, because of the way that Trucking Co. Structures the way they pay their people, that it didn't matter how long he'd been on the road. It mattered how many deliveries he got done, and he still had 6 more deliveries that day. He knew he was behind, and he knew that the only way you get paid is to make sure you make these numbers, no matter how difficult and unreasonable those numbers are. He's had no food, so he stops to grab a bite to eat. And since the day's almost over, he decides, as he has more than once in the past, there's nothing wrong with having a couple of beers at the end of the day. I'm not even going to feel them until after my route's over. He has those couple of beers and finally puts some food in his stomach, looks at his watch and realizes he's got to get a move on to get these deliveries done. So he hops in his car, or he hops in his truck, throws it into drive, and takes off to try and see how quickly he can get to his next delivery on First Street. Do you see how all I've done is tell you the story of Bob?
Right.
But already you have feelings about Bob. You have feelings about the choices that Bob makes. You have feelings about Trucking Co. for how they put Bob in that situation. And different people are going to go, like, the 9-hour thing is the thing I can't get behind. Why do you pay people based on their deliveries instead of for an hourly wage? Right? That's just, especially, I want to know how hard the benchmarks are, right? And then they go, it's never okay to even have one drink, and then somebody else goes, oh, I know those kind of people who say I'm not even going to feel the alcohol. And somebody else goes, wait, he didn't have food in his stomach yet when he had his drink, so it's going to go in faster. Whatever, everybody's having their own narratives, but they're all narratives that are anchored into, like, I never once said he made a bad choice, did I?
No, you didn't.
I just said what he did.
Right.
You automatically went, oh no, man. Oh no, man. Oh no, man. Right. That's narrative structure. Okay. And then from all of those dumb things that he did, we want to try and get a rule. Right. A company has an obligation to make sure that, hopefully a great rule that gets all that stuff together. Or then you start, this is where philosophy and strategy. You can also go down sort of the Rodney Jew model, which I don't know if you know who Rodney Jew is. That's another like OG trial consultant. Rodney Jew, and I don't even know if he's still in, and it's not J-E-W. People think I'm really anti-Semitic. It's a name of Eastern descent. I think it's like J-I-E-U or something. But Rodney used to always focus on the single point of failure, right? What is the one thing that was done that changed everything? Right. And he would focus it on that. So when you're talking about rules and stuff like that, you can go in a lot of different directions, but you're always ultimately going to end up in a narrative. And it's going to be a narrative of a series of choices. And maybe you hone in on one choice, or maybe you let the body of choices speak for themselves. But we're telling a story, right? Without judgment. Without judgment. Because when the jury makes the judgment themselves, they own it. I want them to take ownership of the judgment. Because then it's theirs, not mine.
That makes perfect sense. And I know having done it does. And I mean, it's also interesting for me. I'm still very much a young lawyer, not even though I have 2 kids and apparently I'm an adult, even though I don't recognize it. But I've been very fortunate to go around the country to a lot of these conferences and hear a lot of the greats speak. And I have noticed, actually, this kind of ties in our whole conversation so far. I've noticed 2 things about the people who, for the most part, are getting these really just exceptional results consistently. One is a lot of them had the Jerry Spence Trial Lawyers College type training. And 2, a lot of them also spent some time in the reptile. And so the reptile, or now it's the edge, right, is very much the outline of the opening. It's very much what you just discussed, right? I mean, that was Ball, that was Don Keenan. And so it's just been interesting that despite wherever you go, when you start seeing results, oftentimes you see kind of those 2 things. Have you noticed the same?
What I would say is I know a lot of great people who come from who are crazy about David or are Don Keenan people. I know a lot of great TLC people. I know terrible lawyers who worship David's and Don, and terrible lawyers who have done TLC work. And I know both brilliant and terrible lawyers who have gone in a completely different direction, right? I think that what's happened is that TLC, David, Don, and a couple of others, and I would even say we're also on this list, but we are so, I don't know, hands-on, and we're so busy with cases now that we don't get to do it at this scale. We're working on that. And we do so much of it with AAJ because we really do believe mission-wise, if AAJ is not successful in the state house, none of us have jobs. And if you don't believe me, go try a case in Alabama, or North Carolina in terms of tort laws. So there's all these kind of different places that you can learn these ideas. And I think what David and Don and TLC and a couple of others, they've become scaled distribution mechanisms for these really good ideas, right? I would still say pound for pound that if you get an opportunity to work with us hands-on, I think we're more transformative. But that's just me being like, you're asking a Coke guy what he thinks of Pepsi. But I do really believe that those outfits, they're delivery mechanisms for these things that we know work. The greatest lawyers, I would say, across the boards are the ones who don't have a system. And that's another thing about us is like, we've had so many people come to us say, you should really put your stuff out there as like a system, and have a catchphrase. And our thing is like, it's not a system, it's a toolkit. That's the thing to keep in mind. Go to Spence, with this whole like TLC and Jerry Spence Civil War split, I don't know what, they've sort of gone in 2 different directions and they're mad at each other and they're suing each other. I say go to both. Like if you can get a ticket to both, go to both. And then come try to catch us at AAJ's Ultimate, and then go to Keenan's thing and like go to all of these places. Because if you walk out with just one thing, right? I'll do, so Joe Freed, who you had on, he's really trendy right now. Everybody's into this whole speed trial idea. And man, I'm on board. I'm sold. Do I think that speed trial is that much different than the core fundamental principle of don't waste time on the stuff that doesn't matter, narrow what it is you're focusing on, and speak with clarity to the jury only on what matters and trim the fat? That's just good trial practice, right? And Joe knows that. But what Joe's been able to do with the speed trial is he's able to sort of package that in a new way for the lawyers. Because I haven't seen him talk about the speed trial, but my guess is he's not telling you to talk faster, right? He's probably telling you to maintain a good slow cadence that you can engage on. What he's telling you to do is to really trim the fat, and that's where you get the speed, right? It's good tools are like organized into these systems. But what you want to do is when you go learn the system, you eventually want to throw the system out and just keep the tools. And then you'll have all the tools and you'll have your system, right? Because it's your system is geared towards your unique voice, right? Like what works for you. And the other thing is, most of the folks that are listening are probably doing trucking cases or auto cases, premises cases, stuff like that. When I all of a sudden get a products liability case that has an underlying med mal component, it's really hard to have a system that and we get that a lot. It's like people come to me like, me, I love so-and-so. And I'm like, I love that you love so-and-so. I'm so glad they had an impact on you. Like, but I don't know how to use so-and-so's system because this case is so weird, right? And so that's where only people who have the toolkits, only somebody like Joe he's living off of a toolkit, or someone like us, is we get to break it down and we get to set the pattern, right? We get to do the first one of these, right? So that's a long explanation. So we're going to design a new thing that maybe other people can borrow from when they have a similar case that's sort of two things at once, right? We have to have a way. Do we pick one? Do we have them play off of each other? So it gets really in the weeds and interesting.
It's fascinating. I mean, jury decision making, how one should communicate. I mean, this is the fun stuff. This is why people become lawyers before they get persuaded to go off to big law and get salaries and then run away. I mean, I ran away pretty quickly, but no, this is the fun stuff. And I'm often envious of people in your shoes and the trial consultants, because these guys they're in trial. You guys are involved in some sort of trial or some sort of trial prep probably throughout the year. Whereas, I mean, for a plaintiff's lawyer, if you get 2 or 3 juries a year, it's a great year. So I think the work is incredible, and I've learned tons from people like yourself. And so now our juries change. Like, this is the thing, is that the work never ends, right? Like it's still developing. Our people are changing, right? I mean, juries.
So we could do a lot on how juries are changing. Now, I want to be careful not to step on. I stay in my lane. It's a big thing with me. I am talking about your inner voice and your voice in your body and your comfort with you and your relationship with the jury. And then we'll talk about this in a second. We haven't even gotten to talk about, 90% of our work is witness work. I mean, that when you say I'm in trial all the time, I'm with witnesses all the time. That's where I live most of the time. So I'm careful not to step too much on the jurors' toes, but here's the place that it affects me. Like, when I see the jurors coming, the jury experts, right? So David's partner, Artemis, is like one of my favorite people on the whole planet. Like, she will bring all the bad news about your case to you in all the ways that you didn't see it. The jury people have been coming back to us with stuff that we kind of are feeling out just from working with the witnesses. America is institutionally distrustful right now on both sides of the political spectrum. America is very motivated to make a statement. America feels disempowered, and the jury system is a mechanism to feel empowered. There's a sense of unfairness, right, that can cut against you in the form of your client's just trying to take advantage, or it can go for you in the form of, these people just try to take advantage of little people like me, and we need to send a message, right? It's really an era of big numbers or zeros. Like, that's increasingly the place that we're going. And it's, what are the stories that are going to resonate I mean, I'll say everybody for years and years was saying, I got to watch out for the Trump jurors. I got to watch out for the Trump jurors. We were one of the first to really say, no, we need Trump jurors. The Trump jurors are our best friends, but only if we can tell this story that we want to tell. If the other side's going to be able to undercut this story, or the lawyer can't communicate this story this way, then the Trump jurors are going to kill us, right? But if we can tell the story that we want to tell, that we believe is the true story, the Trump jurors could be some of our, and my biggest upsets have been where the defense was like, thought they scored, man. It's all white male MAGA hat wearing, like there's no chance, because they've been reading this manual someone gave them, right? And we are listening at the substance of what motivates these people. All right. And that's the big, it never ceases to amaze me. Lawyers are some of the most like progressive, enlightened people, but then they'll be like, I need more young women, and I need more, we got a lot of middle-aged black males on the jury. And it's like, it's some of the most like racist, sexist stuff you've ever heard, because what they're doing is they're reducing these people down when they should be looking at these people as sort of dynamic and complex human beings and really listening. So yeah, juries are changing dramatically in the same way that America is changing. I don't know that it's for the worse. The one area that you really have to watch out for in our world is they're living on the TikToks. And so attention spans used to be structured around a 1-hour episodic television show, right? Which is a series of 12-minute blocks. That was our attention span, and now our attention span is like a minute and a half. So there are some ways that jurors are changing that we have to cater to. And then the pool is changing, and who we want to go after in the pool is a little different than it used to be. But I would defer to, any of my good friends who do jury work to kind of have an opinion on that.
Well, before we close up, let's talk about some of the witness prep work. What does that look like? Let's take your I was about to say your standard case, but there probably isn't a standard case, right? So let's take a witness prep session number. What are your goals? What are you hoping to do, and how do you do it? And I recognize it's a loaded question because there's probably a million things that you are considering, and I'm sure it depends in large part on that individual and on the case and their role, right?
Tell the truth with emotional sincerity and clarity. Tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth. Your clients are lying to you constantly, Sharif. Constantly, but not in the way that you think. Okay? There's this thing that was built up so I think about litigation in eras. I call it in the what I call the Liebeck era, right? That's the McDonald hot coffee case, when the defense bar started pumping, or not the defense bar, the insurance companies started pumping all this money into the image of the character on The Simpsons, like with the neck brace, right? Oh yeah. Your client's not lying to you about that. You don't take that case. You're smarter than that. And even most of the youngest people that are most inexperienced people listening to this podcast know that liar a mile away, and they don't take their case. The liar that you don't know about is the one who says it's not that bad. The liar that you're not aware of is the dad who comes into your office and says, I do okay. I don't sleep as well as I used to. But I'm still going to work. I still go to my kids' ball games. I'm going to be all right. I just want my truck fixed. And when you start doing the witness prep work of really asking questions and giving that guy because he comes from the South where men are men, and rub some dirt on it, right? And he doesn't have that. He sees himself as his wife and his kids, knight in shining armor. He's not going to cry to them. He's not going to open up to them. You give him a place where he can talk to you like you're his old buddy from his first job back in the day, who's come into town, and you're on the back porch at midnight, And the buddy says, how you really doing, man? If you can be that guy for him, and that's what our team is trained at, and it takes a long time for us to train someone. And we don't even start working with them unless they've got 10 years of, American Repertory Theater, Harvard Master's Program type experience. We're training our people to be that safe space where this witness can talk. And when that witness starts talking, what you find is, you tell me about sleeping. You said you don't sleep like you used to. Yeah, I don't sleep as well anymore. Tell me about last night. Tell me about the sleep you got last night. I mean, I'm like I do most nights now. I was sleeping in my chair in the living room because I don't like waking my wife up. When's the last night you spent the night next to your wife? No. Yeah, it's been a minute. Tell me about that minute. And then next thing you know, the guy's breaking down crying. And he's telling you stories about what it's like when his son wants to throw a baseball with him and he says he can't right now. And he has to go make up something to be busy so that his son doesn't either feel rejected or think of him as weak. Right? That's witness prep. Like that's the value in your case is in the stories of not ever getting to sleep with your wife next to your wife again, of saying those kinds of things to your son. I mean, I have heard, I actually was doing a thing at AAJ and I was using an example from a case and somebody came up to me and said, you can't use that example anymore. I was like, why? It was like, it's really traumatizing for the people who hear it. And I'm talking about just something that a witness told me that we later used in a case. Like, I just don't, like, the members of this group can't hear that because they're going to have a rough night tonight. And it was a case where for 2 full days of witness prep work, it was a mother. She just said, it's not that bad. We're fine. We're fine. My injured kid's leading a normal life right now. And if you ever see me live, I can share that story with you. So we're digging and we're finding the truth, and we're giving that witness permission to share that truth. And it's really hard for lawyers to do, because what lawyers do when things get difficult and uncomfortable is you guys fix it. You guys make it okay. Witness preparation is about letting it not be okay. Now, there's another side to this, right? They can't become such a woe is me sad sack that the jury doesn't want to get behind them, right? So you have to balance, and this is the challenge in doing proper, really good witness prep, is you have to balance the communication of the severity of the damages with the character of the person who's fighting to still live the best life they can. And now, there's also a lot of role play that we will do, question and answer. There's a lot to witness prep. For us, witness prep is the beginning of the deployment of your toolkit. Because after how we tell the story of opposing party conduct, because that's what's going to aggravate the jury and give the numbers, we also have to get them to fall in love with our person. Especially if the conduct is not so bad that it really angers the jury. Sometimes they'll go, well, the conduct was wrong. It wasn't horribly wrong, but it was wrong, and it really messed this person up, and I really believe in them. And I always say it like this with the whole idea of you can't be a sad sack. If I tell you, I'm going to go hang out in the cancer ward, you want to go hang out in the cancer ward today, your first thought is like, that sounds like the most depressing day ever. But if I say to you, I got this friend, he's fighting cancer, and we're all going to do a fun run to support him, you're like, who says no to that? Right? You want to get the jury to get on their team. And witness prep is for us, we're primarily on Zoom, although sometimes we still do live, and it's multiple sessions over time with homework in between, learning the story of their life with the damages, and then teaching them how to communicate that to the jury, and how to not let opposing counsel's cross-examination questions rob them of the truth. I will say, because we talked about other before it started, we talked about other folks' approach. There are other people out there that do witness prep. We have a thing that I think is unique, because there's a popular trend of like witness prep, getting people back to their core fundamental truths, right? It's almost like you're spinning something in the spin room after a politician's debate. We're not driving people back to core concepts. The core concepts are going to be there. If you need to get that in depot in redirect, you can get it. If you had something core that you didn't get on direct, then that's kind of on you. In cross-examination, we're not spinning, right? In cross-examination, we're just making sure that we tell the truth, and that whatever their spin is, you take the time to correct and clarify. Sort of last thought on witness prep. One of the things I'll tell witnesses a lot is lawyer tricks on cross-examination are like when your uncle finds a quarter behind your ear. First time it happens, you didn't see that coming. It was like magic, trickery. Like, how did that happen? Second time, it's still like, whoa, what the... Once you've seen that done 5 or 6 times, you're looking for the coin in the palm or between the fingers, right? You know it's a sleight of a hand. You can only fall for it so many times. If you teach witnesses the core categories of lawyer trick and how to diffuse those various types, then what you're empowering them to do is not let lawyer technique get in the way of the truth. And that's what I love about Catherine's approach to witness prep. And again, like, she created the field. I mean, she is... we're getting ready to go to the American Society of Trial Consultants to speak again. And when I first went there, when I was first started working with Catherine, I went and started asking, like, who else does witness prep? Who else does witness prep? Because I wanted to learn other people's stuff. And everybody just kept sending me back to Catherine, right? So the core idea of all of it is it's rooted in the truth. So when you see the witness prep techniques for the nuclear verdict and the mongoose and all this stuff that the defense is doing, and they're trying to adapt our techniques for the defense, they're coming up short, and they're actually looking worse because they look like they're obfuscating, right? Someone who's used a defense lawyer who studied what they think our technique is, but are not rooting it in the truth, they're just setting themselves up for, all-time, like, Philip Miller mousetrapping. Their people are just going to get their knees chopped off, because in order to do the technique, you have to root it in the truth. And if the truth's not on your side, then it's on you as the lawyer to try and find a way to settle. At the end of the day, at least that's because our approach doesn't do very well when our client's not telling the truth, right? When I say it doesn't do very well, like, I don't think they should try it. I really believe that. And that's why I love being on the team that we're on. Like, I look back, I've got a half dozen cases in the last 5 years, and I went to the lawyer on every one of them and said, you've got a problem, and I'm sorry to be the person to break this to you. And half of those, the lawyer was like, yeah, that's kind of why I hired you, because I had this suspicion and I just needed to know. And we need to settle it away. But witness prep, I mean, it's different on every case. It's dynamic. It's compelling. You get to have this incredible impact on people's lives. You get to teach the attorneys through the case when you're doing a witness prep. And it's, I don't know, I truly love it. Don't get me wrong, I love teaching, but I don't miss the courtroom that much. And by miss the courtroom, I don't even mean me as a trial lawyer. I mean, I don't miss going in and doing trials with lawyers, because I almost never do that anymore, because there's just too much need for us on the witness prep side. I don't miss the trials because I really enjoy meeting these fascinating and wonderful people and being a part of their lives. And, we get these calls all the time, and it's good for, honestly, for client retention and advertising and getting them to refer their friends if you're a lawyer doing good witness prep. Because people will come and say, I know the trial's over, but can I still see Andrew? Can I still talk to Alex or Jeremy, even though the trial's over? Like, that's the best feeling in the world. Like, you want to be the kind of lawyer that your clients are going, I really feel like you changed my life. You didn't just get me the money. You helped me get through the whole thing. Like, that's the counselor piece. So that's my tirade about witness prep. And it's the best part of the work.
It sounds awesome. Let me ask one more question on the witness prep. What is the transfer like from the preparation session that you and your team are having with the witnesses and the lawyer in the courtroom? What does that look like?
Hopefully the lawyer has worked with us. Hopefully the lawyer is someone who's taken workshops with us, who's trained with us. That's a big step in the right direction. Like when we talk mega verdicts, a lot of them, like I said, those are the people who were with Catherine when they were baby lawyers and who brought us direct examinations over time. The way it translates is we're making sure that the dynamic of genuine curiosity that we create in the session, we then hand to the lawyer. Right? So yeah, we'll do some direct examination structure with you and go like, hey, which topics do we want to cover? Which do we not want to cover? How do we want to sequence them? But what we're hoping for is that you, the lawyer, can come in and instead of leading the witness, you can have the genuine curiosity, even though you've already heard the story, still have the genuine curiosity that the jury has and that we have. Like my team, we genuinely are emotionally invested. If you can take that and keep your questions, if you're a plaintiff's lawyer and you've never heard of clean language and you don't know who Robin Wishart is, Robin Wishart, she's out of Canada. She's freaking brilliant. She's always the smartest person in the room, in every room that she's in, but she's also just one of the nicest people ever. She does work with something called clean language, which is a clinical psychotherapy technique from the UK that is sort of a variation on what we've always been doing. We just weren't smart enough to know what we were doing. And that is identifying metaphors, looking for microexpressions, and keeping language open and repetitious, right? So that when you're talking to your lawyer, your witness on the stand, and they say, it's tough these days. Instead of, can you tell the folks on the jury an example of tough? That's going to shut your witness down, and that's going to make you performative to the jury. What you want to do in that moment, and hopefully you're going to learn from us while we're working with you, is to just kind of lean in and go, tough? What kind of tough? Is that tough? Because what you'll get from that is beautiful and amazing, and it keeps the jury focused on that witness. It keeps everything in the moment, right? So we're going to be teaching you how to be open, how to be curious, how to choose the stories. And then we're going to tell the witness, like, hey, here are the stories that we have coming. And then we're not going to over-prepare. We're not going to script. We're going to try and be, again, like that authentic self. So we're doing the heavy lifting. We're doing all the digging. Then we'll help you pick out the stuff. Then we'll help you structure the stuff a little bit. And then we'll give you the tools within that structure to execute. But it's not going to be, here's your list of questions. It's going to be, here's your topics, and here's the tone you need to keep when you're in this section, right? That's kind of what it looks like for us to take it from damages work to trial. But again, now this is why, again, we love the storytelling part of it. That's why we're in witness prep. Because at a certain point, opposing party conduct fits patterns. And we'll tell you, this, okay, this is the pattern you need to follow. This is the pattern you need to follow. Where everything is dynamic and new is with the witness work. Because there's some pattern recognition in certain spinal injuries cause certain things that you can't do around the house that are pattern, right? But those aren't the things that have the value anyway. I can tell you with certain back injuries that if I got 20 people, all 20 of them have moved all of the stuff in their kitchen from the upper cabinet to the lower cabinet. I can tell you that. And that's a good thing to articulate to the jury. But what's unique is for each of those 20 people, the thing that they miss the most is different. The thing that they would change about their life is different. You know, one of them may say, I used to love to cook, and it's too hard for me to reach the things. And I remember cooking with my grandma, and that's where I got my love of cooking. 1 out of 20. Someone else is going to be what gardening meant to them. Or, you know, I used to love going to museums, and now I can't stand up. And then when I sit in a wheelchair at the museum, it starts to get uncomfortable. And the story that comes, well, tell me where your love for museums came from. And that's when you get, I was adopted, and my adopted father was an artist, and I felt most loved when I was in a museum. So museums are now like, I'm just making this up. It's like, that's the kind of stuff that just comes out of people every day. That's what the jury needs to hear, because that is, again, it's the truth, right? Stories are truer than truth itself. I mean, that's why the sacred texts of religions are stories. You know, I'm fascinated by, you know, the great story of Christianity is the story of like a guy who didn't really do anything to anybody being beaten senseless, like the most torturous death ever. And he still was like asking for forgiveness for the people that were hurting him. Like that's a concept that can only be told in a story. It can't be told in a little wise saying, you know. There's forgive those people who are mean to you because life will be happier. You know, you can have a saying, but a story is so much more compelling. And that's why witness prep is at the heart of all of this, is because that's where the stories live. And that's, you know, Catherine's book, AAJ Press, buy a copy today. I get no money when you buy one. I just love her. It's titled Harvesting Witnesses' Stories. Harvesting Witnesses' Stories. And the subtitle was the title she really wanted, which was How to Get Your Client the Second Best Life in the World. And that's a phrase that came from a witness that she worked with. And I recently heard that somebody was giving a speech on like how to get your client the second best life in the world, and saying they came up with it, which annoys me to no end. But it came from a witness, and who looked at Catherine one day and said, you know, here's the thing. Before this happened, I had the best life in the world. And talked about all the things that she loved about her life and her kids and her husband and her day-to-day and her job that she doesn't have anymore. She's like, I had the best life. I looked forward to every day when I woke up. Now, I'm just hoping that whatever we get out of this trial is enough to buy me the second best life. I'm fighting for the next best life. And that's what we're doing. We're fighting to get our people the second best life in the world after the life that was taken away from them. And as good a second best life as money can buy. That for me is the core of witness prep and why I love it. And I don't know, I feel like I just spent an hour and a half talking about how much I love my job, but I do. We are so blessed to do the work that we do. Truly, truly blessed. And I'm just a big nerd. Like people, you know, I'm getting ready to get together with some of my favorite friends. We got to work on a case we called the Dream Team case, because it was Mitchell and Katie Riggs, who you should definitely talk to. They're settlement documentary filmmakers, and Artemis Malakpour, who works with David and Amy Pardick. And we've gotten together in the past, and it's like, all right, no talking about work. We get 10 minutes in.
Yeah.
And we end up back at the work, and it's not because we don't have lives. Like, you got 2 little kids. I'm an old dad. I didn't think I could have kids. My kid is the highlight of my world. But I'll be bouncing that kid on my knee with you know, one of those other consultants, and all we can do is just talk about work, because we feel blessed to kind of do what we've been called to do. And I hope everybody that's listening to this eventually gets to if it's trial law, if it's not trial law, that you get to a place where you're just freaking excited. You're excited to do the thing that you do, right? And I think trial law is one of the best. I know it's one of the best fields you could ever be in. I'm into it.
Wow, we're lucky to have you teaching, helping us out with cases, and of course your willingness to come on this podcast. I really enjoyed the last hour or so, Andrew. But you're not done yet. We always ask one more question,
Yeah.
but this will be it. So we do have a lot of young lawyers and law students who listen to this podcast. If you had to give them just a few bits of advice for those who want to follow kind of this path and become a trial lawyer, what are you telling them to do?
A lot of the stuff I've already said. Be curious, not judgmental. Vulnerability is strength. Don't try to con the jury. Don't try to pitch things to the jury. Instead, listen to the jury. Carry people's briefcases, man. I mean, go to trials. We have like Courtroom View Network now. There's so many ways that you can take in great trial. I mean, you can, sitting at home, watch Keith Mitnick try a case. Sitting at home, watch, Kurt Arnold and Jason Itkin try a case. Sitting at home, watch Joe Freed try a case. Some of the best lawyers out there actually are not people you've ever heard of, because they get their $1 billion verdicts and then they don't go teach a class or advertise it. Right? Just the quote unquote rock stars that we get to work with, a lot of them, if you go to the circle of advocates, you'll see 100 lawyers. Those are the best of the best. I don't know, maybe 8 of them are going to be people that you recognize from a trial guides book. The others, you might not know who the heck they are. Like if you're in Missouri and you're not going to watch John Simon or any of his kids or his associates try a case, man, you're missing out. I mean, there's not a John Simon book in trial guides, but my God, that whole family is gifted. But especially John, he is sort of the guy that started it all. Go watch cases. Go be curious. Help people out. Offer to do cover some not particularly important directs for a friend of yours. Those lesser medical experts. You learn by doing. I don't care what office you're in. If you're not doing, you're not learning. And go to all of this stuff, man. Try to get your bosses to spring for or apply for the scholarship for, whatever there might be. I always tell people your best pound for pound that you're ever going to do is going to be AAJ's Advanced Depot College. Because of the return on investment, because depots are really way more important. Now, Satch Oliver is doing some stuff. I've never actually seen it. He's been doing some stuff with John Romano. I get Satch's book, Depositions or Trial.
I've got it. I've read it. It's excellent.
Freaking brilliant.
But he's also, he's a big part of Advanced Depot College.
He is. So
yeah.
Satch is, what Advanced Depot College is, it gives you hands-on the opportunity to do
right.
work. Right. So Advanced Depot College, the next best thing is probably AAJ's Ultimate Advocacy course. And those are the two that are now, if you do birth trauma or elder abuse cases, then AAJ is a real resource, because those are the two best groups in the country of any type of practice. I mean, better than TLC or anything are the birth trauma and elder abuse within AAJ. But so after you do Advanced Depot College, or try to catch Satch through like John Romano's Connectionology or something like that. I don't know if they let you do it hands-on there. I haven't actually been. Then you go to AAJ's Ultimate. The faculty at AAJ's Ultimate this year was nuts. It was me and Alexandra from my team with Eric Oliver, Amy Pardick, Artemis Malakpour, Patty Keene, Seth Cardelli, who's a phenomenal trial lawyer, like Mike Doyle was there.
I know Mike.
The faculty on that was just off the frickin' chain. So I would say Ultimate is next. I think it's good to catch a workshop with us. If you get plugged into the TLC stuff, like there's no harm in it. Some people love it. Some people think it's a cult. Hey, all religions are a cult to some extent. It's whatever resonates with you. Go see Keenan. Go see, there's only a few places that I would say steer clear of. We don't speak ill of people. But if you come to me privately, basically anybody who tells you have to do it my way or the highway, those are the people I'm scared of. And they can't explain to you, I'll use this as an example, Eric Oliver, and that's another OG trial consultant from back in the day. Eric said, what does the research tell us that 12 jurors sitting with their arms crossed means? And everybody raised their hand and goes, means that they're shutting you out. They're not connected to you. And Eric says, exactly. Except in that one trial where it meant the air conditioning was on much too high and everybody was cold. Right? So these hard and fast rules, there's so much junk science out there now. This hand movement means this. It's like, no, it doesn't. Show me. And if you go, well, show me the research. It's like, well, it's just people know that. And I'm like, I've been an actor for 40 years. I've been studying human behavior and movement and emotions. Generally, yes, closed off versus open postures are crucial, but, you have to put your hand here when you're doing this. If anybody tells you that, run for the hills. But otherwise, I don't think there's a place that you should be not learning. I would steer clear from the people who talk at you instead of letting you do, and people who say you have to do this thing rather than saying, tell me what's going on with you here. Your hands need to be here. That's not the answer. Why? Tell me what's going on right now that you feel like your hands are doing this. That's the difference. It's just beware of people who have all the answers, because that's snake oil. But otherwise, I can't think of somebody that I wouldn't, or at least of the ones I've listed. So, Sorry De Lamont's not bad either. Jesse Wilson's doing some stuff with masks that seems interesting. Go to all the people and try to catch us somewhere. And our website is stuck in 1997 because we have more if we fix it, we might get more clients, and that's not what we need right now because I need a weekend. But we're always at, if you reach out to us, get on our mailing list, and who knows, we'll be, I'm going ready to do Alabama trial lawyers or Alabama Association of Justice in Florida in a couple weeks, and it'll be a nice 3 hours to work with me. I'm going to be doing a little bit of witness prep, some of the story stuff that I didn't get into here because I still try to keep it away from the defense, and doing some exercises. So come catch us. But just
we'll get you in Virginia here too, right? That's the hope.
Hey, if you guys, it's all just a matter of the schedule. I think you're doing it in October, you said?
That's right. And actually, we haven't released it to the world yet. So maybe by the time this podcast airs, we'll have let people know that we're taking on this adventure. So yeah, it's going to be awesome. And Andrew, this has been great. I'm super grateful that we met in New Orleans and that we've stayed in touch. And this has really, really just been an exceptional episode. So thank you. I hope we will stay in touch, not hope. We will stay in touch, and we'll talk again soon. This has been awesome.
Glad to be a part of it, and thank you as well.
Thank you for listening to this episode of RVA Trial Lawyers, Virginia's trial lawyer podcast. For more episodes, check out rvatriallawyers.com.